All right, I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you, but sometimes the power can go out and it's only in half the house. Half the plugs work and half the lights work. We're here with Ryan from LumenTek Electrical out in Red Deer, Alberta, and today he's going to be sharing with us some insights and wisdom on what that means and what you need to do about it. So Ryan, get us started.
So if you lose power in half your house, most likely what it is the utility company's lost a phase. So you have single phase power going to your house, but you have two lines. So you have your 240 volts, but in the middle is neutral. So you can lose one side of that. And what will happen is half the circuits in your house won't have power. So it doesn't necessarily mean half the light switches won't work, because those could all be on one circuit. So you might have all your lights working, a bunch of plugs don't work, or none of the lights work, or any combination of that. One of the easiest ways to tell if it's a utility problem is go downstairs to your panel, check to see if any breakers are tripped. If nothing's tripped in the panel, try turning your oven on. If it doesn't preheat, then you know that you have a phase issue from the utility company, or higher up in the panel before that. There's not much between the main breaker and the utility company that really goes wrong. Typically, it's a utility issue or main breaker issue. Either way, it's something you want to check right away, because you could start getting power surges and weird voltages that will wreck electronics in no time. But your dryer and your oven are the two easiest ways to tell, because they use 240 volts to heat. So if you're missing one side of that, you don't have any power and it just won't heat up at all. The other thing you could lose is a neutral. So you will have kind of the opposite problem. Your oven will work, your dryer will work, but everything else will do weird stuff. So you'll have your lights really flickering. If you turn anything on, the lights will dim right down, or they'll get really bright when you turn stuff off. There's all sorts of weird issues. If you unplug something, like if you're running a vacuum and you unplug the vacuum, the lights stop working. When you plug the vacuum back in, the lights will turn back on again, and they'll be really dim or really bright. And any kind of issues like that's typically a neutral problem, and that could be anywhere in the panel, service, utility side. Most commonly, it's on the meter base we've seen, or the utility side past the meter base, and usually then it's a few of the neighbors will have the same problem. Usually that's when the snow melts, or when it first gets cold, when all the temperatures really change drastically. That's when we start seeing all those issues. It's always so much fun for us when there's a foot of snow on the ground all of a sudden, it's minus 40 and nothing's working.
Yeah, especially in the case of underground services, right? So what are some of the possible problems that people have if they have an underground service, and how do you fix it?
It really depends what goes wrong. We had one recently where the neutral wire snapped underground, and that was in a conduit. So what happens is, if you get water in your conduit or condensation throughout the year, when it freezes, the water, everyone knows water expands when it freezes, but if it's in a pipe, there's nowhere for it to go, so it gets longer. So it stretches all the wires. So after a few freeze and thaw cycles, it'll actually snap a wire. And that's where everything will be really weird, and then it kind of goes back to normal sometimes, and then it gets weird again, and that's just the wire touching and opening with different freeze cycles. So that's kind of the most common way we've seen it when it's outside. When it's up for an overhead service, usually when that happens, it's just corrosion on the connection, and it's just years of the cable being in the elements, rain, whatever on it, UV damage, and the connection gets loose. And same idea, when it heats up, it makes good connection. When it gets cold, all the materials shrink and it doesn't fill that lug as tight. Those are the two most common ones with your service entrance. And the meter base, it's the same thing. The meter base is the same for above ground or underground utility most of the time, and that's just a wire lug, just heating, cooling all the time, and the wire is usually different material, and it heats and cools differently. So that will create a loose connection and start having weird power issues.
And then sometimes with the wire coming into the meter base, and let's say there's ground settling and things like that, sometimes, it pulls that wire down and you get some shorts. Have you seen that before?
We did. It was a duplex meter base. So it was, I think it was a townhouse or a duplex. I can't remember if there was more units, but they had 2 units next door that had a meter base shared on the dividing wall between them. And they brought the cable into the top like you're supposed to, but then as the ground settled, it pulled cable down into the ground, and then the two cables touched the bus bars and dead shorted it. Yeah, they just the homeowners or the tenant said they smelt a bunch of burning, and they went outside and there's smoke coming out of the meter base. He thought it was his neighbor's barbecue that he's burning something on there. Yeah, and then he went back inside, had no power, and then found that was what happened there.
And then in that case, what happens?
It was like a 60s build, so the meter base wasn't code anymore, so we had to change that, and there was probably 3 layers of stucco that had been added over the years on top of it. So that was the best day ever, chipping that out, trying to chip it out to the size of the new meter base, so there was no repair to do, and pull the old meter base out, and we had to take it out in pieces, so we had to cut it up into small pieces and take it out one piece at a time, and try not to wreck the siding, and then try to re-waterproof it, reinstall it. It was not a fun time. It was a typical Friday at 3:00 when we got the call. So we're scrambling, trying to find the parts, because that's not something that we typically stock.
Right.
We don't need them very often. And trying to find a supplier in town that had a new one that was kind of similar to the old one, so that where the cable came in the bottom wasn't going to be too different. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel on trying to get the two services coming out into the same spots.
Wow. So a lot of bad things can go wrong. So if people, do have this issue and there's funny things going on with their house, they're losing, or they suspect they might have lost a phase, what should they do?
The sooner you call, the better, because what will happen is every time that opens and closes, there's heat, and the more heat you have, the more problems you have. So we've had it before where the connection's gotten loose, they started having issues, but they ignored it. And what happened is every time it got hot and cold, the insulation on the wire would burn and get shorter. Like the wire itself would get melted because aluminum, all the services are aluminum, which has a low melting point. So the cable just kept getting shorter and shorter. So when we did get time to do the repair, we had to lower the meter base a foot because the whole cable is so damaged, we couldn't reconnect it. So it started off probably the size of my pinky. And by the time we actually got there, it was probably a third of that size. So we couldn't reuse that wire because the same problem would happen. Now it's too small. So we had to go back until we had good wire, but then the insulation was so damaged from heat because the heat will just track down that wire, damaging the insulation. And just to put in perspective, that insulation is rated for 90 degrees Celsius. So it was getting really hot for a really long time before they actually called us. But yeah, the sooner you call, the better, because then we can catch it when we're taking 1 inch, 2 inches off the wire, not a foot.
Wow.
Yeah. The sooner the better.
That's a lot. That's a big deal.
I don't know how it didn't burn down, because that cable goes underground. It's not fused. Like it's fused for the whole street, which is, if each house has a 100 amp service, that could be 1,500 amps at least.
Wow.
And so you're not going to blow that up by shorting out your service.
Oh my gosh. So a lot of things going on there. So if you're noticing something weird with your house, lights are flickering, or any of the things that Ryan had described, you know who to call. Anything that we missed, Ryan?
No, I think that's pretty much why you get half your power.
That's covered it. So if you notice that you've lost half the power in your house, or you suspect something weird is going on, don't take matters into your own hands. Call Ryan from LumenTek, and he'll be able to come out and suss out the problem and fix it. So give him a call. Thank you so much for joining us on this video, and we will see you on the next one.